Hello and welcome to Cognitions, Speaking the Unspeakable with JP.
And Stacy D.
I am JP Craddock, and that is the one and only Stacy D Love. We are broadcasting remotely here on KUAW Radio. Coming up on the show today, we have our question of the day, which is, what are the different types of sex offenders? What are the different types of sex offenders? And is it true that once a sex offender, always a sex offender? So we have that coming up right after mental health and illness in the news. If you have any comments about the QOD, the question of the day, or any questions, you can send us those comments through either the YouTube broadcast or through Facebook, and we will answer those questions. If you have any questions that you want us to cover on the show, you can email them to us at speakingtheunspeakable0608@gmail.com. That's speakingtheunspeakable0608@gmail.com. All right, let's get our check.
Always like us. Please always like us on all of our recordings.
Yes,
like. We like you. You like us.
Right. And please also share, even if we are covering a topic that does not particularly pertain to you, because we're talking about sex offenders today. But you never know, when you share the show, there may be someone else out there who it does pertain to, or who could stand to learn something about the question of the day and the information that we have provided. So please like and share. All right, Stacy D, time to check in. How's the D?
The D's been doing really, really well. But you would not believe this. Because you know how I really have a love to really be able to cook like my mother. I don't want to clean like her because she wasn't right. She had us doing too much. We didn't even have a mop as a child. Some people
hands and knees. Hands and knees. That's the way to get it done.
We didn't have a mop, so I don't have the desire to be. I'm clean. I'm not nasty, but I do not have the desire to clean like my mom. But I do have the desire to want to cook, And she used to really be cooking in all these cast iron skillets. And when my mom passed, all of her girlfriends came over. They had me go through her house and everything because I'm the only girl. And I was there. It's like, oh, Stacy, can I? I'm like, girl, yeah, you can have all that. I don't want that because the D did not do no cooking. I didn't have to. I made great reservations.
Well,
so anyway, since I have my
throwing down,
huh?
You be throwing down, D.
It's my mama's spirit in me. Now let me finish my story. So, I have King now, and I want to be that Proverbs 31 woman. So I done went out and bought me some cast iron skillets. Mm-hmm. And you can do everything. You can do it on the skillet, you can do it on the top, and then just throw it in the oven. And hey, I had made up this stuffed chicken with spinach and artichoke. And I stuffed that in my, and I made a real good gravy with it. So now I had to put it in the oven so the chicken can cook and all that. Boy, I went to go get that pot out the oven. My mama didn't tell me that you cannot use regular pot holders. Look.
Yeah, you need.
I almost dropped that.
Well, yeah.
So King said I don't have to cook no more because I'm hurting myself cooking.
Did you use the silicone, the pot holders that have the silicone covering?
No, I got the old school pot holders. Hell, mama used to have old school pot holders.
But she knew how to handle them cast iron skillets, Stacy D.
Yeah, I'm about ready to throw that one in the trash.
You tripping.
That was on Sunday.
Okay, so let me guess how this went. You must have seared the chicken on the top on the range, and then put everything together in the skillet and put it in the oven to finish. Okay, see, I call that one skillet chicken cooking because
And it was so good. It was
yes,
so good.
let me
But I
just
couldn't really enjoy it because my hand was hurting for about 4 days.
But Stacy D, with when you have the cookware that you can go from the top to the oven, yes, that handle is on fire. You got to get the silicone pot holders, okay, because that silicone is a wonderful substance. Like
Yeah, I already
it
went on
does
Amazon and
not.
ordered some. Yeah, I had to go
Yes,
on Amazon. I had to do me some research, and I already went on Amazon. They should be here tomorrow.
there you go. Now I do that kind of cooking in stainless steel. You just mentioned cast iron. So before any listeners run out and buy cast iron, you need to tell them how to take care of cast iron, because cast iron, it does require a level of care.
Yes, it does. I mean,
or it'll rust.
But guess what? It don't mess it up though. It do not mess it up.
Tell them what to do.
Yeah, you have to retreat it with oil. Well, back in the day, I used to see my mama do some lard on it. Mama used to grease it with lard, because that's the only thing that we didn't have to wash was her cast iron.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't play about that. That's how she fried her chicken in, her pork chops. I mean, and it was just a taste that I have not gotten since Mama been gone.
Well, you gonna have it now because you got cast iron.
Because I ain't messing with that cast iron. I'm done.
Stacy D, don't waste no cast iron skillet.
Hey, guess what? I'll bring it to you.
I need some cast iron. Let me tell you, I was in one of them places that sell, all that kind of stuff. And I was like, well, let me check out the cast iron.
And they're expensive.
They are expensive.
Yes.
And so I backed up off of them because I don't trust myself to not rust out the cast iron. I know
it's
you're
real easy though. You just have to, okay. It cannot soak. When you're done with it, you wash it, you dry it very well, and you grease it up, and you sit it in the oven on 450 for like 10 minutes.
There we go. That's the information me and the listeners needed to have. Yep. Mr. Walker, he paying attention.
Turn off. Okay, hold on. There's one more thing. Then you turn this the oven out and put some aluminum foil over it and turn it upside down.
What for?
I guess like if there's still some water up in it, when you turn it upside down, it's going to fall off. That's what I'm thought.
Now, when they sell cast iron, do they give these directions? Because I don't remember seeing these directions.
Yes. Probably when our parents was getting it now. That was something that was probably passed down. I don't even think my mama bought that skillet. I think that was my great-grandma's or my grandma's skillet. That skillet, I'm, really get like up in my feelings about it because I let all that stuff go. And that was family, some family heirlooms. I'm sorry, I know I stuttered, but those are some family things that I really should have kept. And them old hoes knew it. That's why they they should have been like, now these my mama's besties. They should have been like, oh no, Stacy, I know you don't cook, baby, but you gonna keep this because I probably was your great-great-grandma's. I'm not gonna, oh yes, thank you.
They are passed. Let me tell you two things that get passed down: cast iron skillets and what mixer? KitchenAid.
KitchenAid.
A KitchenAid.
They took that too. But King bought me one since I'm the cooker now. I actually, this is another story. We was up in Nebraska Furniture Mart. Nebraska, I need y'all to run me my $25. But we was up in Nebraska Furniture Mart and they were on sale because I've been looking because, I make some bad cakes. And I was like, baby, can I have one? And he was like, no, baby, that's going to be next. But right now we got to get some furniture for the basement. And I was like, no, I want it. Oh my God. I think I was 5 years old. I got in the car and I just started crying. I can't never get what I want. Guess who I was acting like?
Sashi boo.
But King turned that big old truck around and he got me my KitchenAid. And he's like, here, you big old baby. Everybody done spoiled you. Now I'm spoiled. I'm like, yeah, you weren't supposed to spoil me. But yeah, I have my KitchenAid. And I'm going to pass that on down.
Yes, because
but I'm bringing you the cast iron skillets though. How about that?
They both will last forever.
Forever and ever.
A KitchenAid mixer, the great grandkids. Let me tell you, I bought my sister a KitchenAid mixer. Do you know she let it sit in and my sister is a for real cook.
Yes, she is.
Like our mother was. She let it sit in a box in the basement for years. Playing with my money. She played with my money a lot.
Can't play with my money. She
eventually brought it on up to the kitchen and it been getting used. But I was like,
because they're so heavy. They so heavy.
And expensive. You don't let a KitchenAid mixer
with a hand mixer.
Who allows an expensive mixer like that to sit in the basement? She be tripping. All right. Well, my check-in is, and it's totally unrelated, but it is related to our QOD, question of the day. I have reached a point where after 22 years, I have decided I'm done seeing sex offenders in treatment. I'm over it. So anybody listening to the show, it's
draining.
It's draining. I'm making this clear because after the show, I do not want a bunch of calls from sex offenders talking about, I need treatment, I'm court ordered, I'm on probation, I'm on parole, I'm on this. Do not call me because I'm done. I'm done. Okay.
But I will do, if you get a DUI or you need some parenting, I am on the register in the counties. FYI.
Stacy D is the one.
But sex offenders, I don't do. I do not do sex offenders.
And I want, for anyone who is looking for a therapist for a friend or family member who has these issues, every therapist cannot do sex offender treatment. They have to be specially trained. Okay, this is additional training because they don't really teach this in graduate school. Okay, no. When it comes to sex offender treatment, you have to be specially trained and experienced in that area. So if you're looking for somebody, don't just call any random fool thinking they gonna treat your Uncle Junebug who like to, sexually act out. No, it has to be a specially trained clinician. All right, let's get to mental health and illness in the news.
Hold on one moment. I'm looking at our Facebook page. Hey, Nadine, thank you for checking in. Maurice Copeland, don't be talking about me. Yes, I am a youngster, but I do know my way around the kitchen. I just did not know my way around that cast iron skillet.
Is he talking mess about you with the skillet?
But yes,
let me tell
thank you, please.
No, and let me vouch for the D. She do throw down. The D throw down. All right. Here's a brief little COVID update because in this area, the mask mandate is going back into effect on Monday. And something for everybody to think about is the Delta variant was at 1.4% back in May when the mask mandate was lifted. It's being put back into place now because, the Delta variant is at 82% now. It has gone from 1.4% to 82%. So the CDC is recommending, hey, we're going to have to step back a little bit. Everybody, please put your mask back on. Okay. So don't have a fit about this. Don't act like a baby and a brat or a fool. Just put the daggum mask on. Okay. Quit breathing COVID all in people's face.
It's getting back real again. It's about to get back real again. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Simone Biles has withdrawn from 2 events in the Olympics to focus on her mental health. They aren't diagnostically, they're not specifically stating what it is that she is struggling with, but the most likely culprit is some form of anxiety. She is a survivor of sexual abuse. I think that has, played a role in affecting her mental health and her functioning. And she had a rough start, from day one. It was a rough start. And so it's probably best for her. Most people have been supportive. Some people have not, but those people just need to shut up. A person has a right to take care of their mental health.
That's
and so that
one.
is great. Mm-hmm. Right. Okay, so next story. The man who was accused, I don't know if you recall this, Stacy D, but there was a man who went into a Asian,
yes,
it's called Young's Asian Massage.
I remember.
It's not really a massage parlor. They call it a spa because, you don't want to call it a massage parlor. But he was in court and he cited, because he's trying to make it clear, listen, this was not a hate crime. Okay. This wasn't out of hate. This was out of.
Listen a little closer. What?
Yeah. He said it wasn't a hate crime. It wasn't about hate. It was about passion. He didn't use the word passion, but he said that he has a sex addiction and that was his motivator for going in there and shooting up the place. The judge noted that sex addiction is not recognized as a mental health diagnosis. So he got a life sentence. After pleading guilty to 4 counts, he got a life sentence. Now, addictions are a diagnosis, technically. So the judge isn't exactly correct. There are addictions, but when it comes to sex addiction, no, it's not an insanity plea. So you think you
well, a lot of men uses that
as a cheating
defense when they're married. It's like, I'm gonna go get some help. I'm gonna go get some help because I have a sex addiction. Okay, it's not like crack or alcohol.
Well, and we've had some celebrities who have.
Oh yeah,
they got caught.
A lot of them
cheating. It's a sex addiction. Well, go get some help. There's treatment for it. But if you have killed people, do not expect to get a lighter sentence because you have a sex addiction. Okay?
I mean, a gun and sex.
Right. Well, and let's look at this diagnostically. It doesn't make sense that a person is to shoot up, to kill that which is the source or the root of your addiction. Does not make sense. That is not what people typically do. Mm-mm. And so he didn't go so far as to say that he did it to try to stop himself from being a patron of the spa. And so it's like, why are you going in there and shooting up the place? Because diagnostically, what we're really looking at is perhaps, some sociopathy, which is technically one of the personality disorders, antisocial personality disorder. But
which are the scary ones?
Those are the scary. It's a sociopath, and so the judge.
So he's in the right place for life.
Yeah, he needs to be locked up for life,
but he also needs to get some therapy. I'm real big on that. He needs not only to be incarcerated, but he needs to get
real. They get therapy in prison.
I was gonna work there, and I was looking. I didn't like how they were doing it. It's just like they're just on the books, but not really doing it.
A mutual friend of ours,
I know,
did about a few months of therapy in the prison.
And she hated it.
She had to get up out that prison.
Had to. But when I went for my interview with them, it wasn't like it was like they had options. Like if they come, they come. If they don't, they don't. And most of the time, they said when it's a woman therapist, a lot of them come a lot more than it is.
They come. They definitely are going to show up if it's a female therapist. Stacy D. They can get therapy in the prison. That's all I'm gonna say. I don't know how the level and the intensity of it. I know that this fool, he needs to be locked up for the rest of his life without chance.
And I'm glad he's off the street. So we're gonna give hands to that judge. Right. He was right on.
Okay. our last story under mental health and illness in the news. This one is
I hope this is a good one because I had one, but I'm.
Oh, this one gonna get you going.
I hope this is the one that I want you to talk about because come on, give it to me.
This one gonna get you going. Robert Sylvester Kelly has new charges pending, which include male victims. Oh, for everybody who does not know, Robert Sylvester Kelly is also known as R.
Kelly.
Yes. R. Kelly has new charges pending, which include male victims. Apparently, the evidence includes recorded phone conversations and videos, including the males. But the prosecution's filing states that investigators have been, quote, unable to confirm the identity or ages of the individuals appearing in these videos, end of quote. But 2 have been identified. 1, so I know you, Stacy D, before you even say free R. Kelly, you're gonna let me get through this, okay? Because as soon as I heard this, I was like, I'm immediately talking about this on the show because Stacy D and her R. Kelly, Bill Cosby mess, say free him. Listen to this. 2 males have been identified. They call them John Doe number 1, John Doe number 2. 1 met R. Kelly at a McDonald's when he was 17 years old. R. Kelly allegedly asked him what all was he willing to do to get help into the music business. He started taking the boy to the recording studio, let him see how, to really kind of get in his head a little bit. And apparently the sexual abuse began at that time. The sexual relationship, which is technically abuse because he was underage, began at that time. That young boy introduced him to another young boy, and that young boy, the sexual relationship he's reporting, it didn't start until years later. So technically, they're not going to be able to include that as a sex offense for sex with an underage person unless he was forced. So there are videos because apparently, allegedly, R. Kelly would have these 2 males have sex with some of the girls. If the older gentleman is saying that he was forced to engage in sexual activities, then he may be able to be included in their case. Here's the question. I'm trying to figure out why everybody is surprised, because in his long list of previous victims, there was a female who he made her cut all her hair off and dress like a boy. Why are people surprised that there are male victims coming forward now? Ladies, pay attention to me. If your man tell you to shave your head and dress like a boy, bing, 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 he wish you had a penis. So people shouldn't be surprised to hear this. All right. Of course, you all know me. I'm hoping he lands underneath the jail. And of course, I want him to rot there. This is my typical stance. Once again, Stacy D, go ahead. Give me your thoughts, D.
I just want to cry.
You just want to cry. Well, that's better than you saying free R. Kelly. Oh, in addition to these 2 males, it's a list. It's like 10 or 11 other like female victims also. Okay. But what's making the news the most is people are surprised, like male victims. He made the girl dress up like a boy. Come on, people. All right. Question of the day. What are the different types of sex offenders? And is it true that once a sex offender, always a sex offender? Okay. Let me first run down the types of sex offenders. We have rapists, statutory rapists, what I call incestuous family
Can you go back to the
structure.
statutory? Can you go back and?
Oh, I'm gonna go into all of them in detail.
Okay, you
I'm
just
going
let me
all
know
of them in
that.
detail.
Okay.
You have your family structure, incestuous sex offenders, pedophiles, and then voyeurs. Okay, let's start with rapists. Now, there's two types of rapists. You have your active aggressive rapes, and then you have your passive and coercive rapes. Active aggressive rapists, that's the use of physical force, like they literally physically overpower their victim. The passive coercive rapists overpower their victims, but they may use alcohol or drugs, or if they meet someone who is already intoxicated, and that allows them, well, the date rape is a different category.
It is?
That's a different category. I'm gonna get to that. It's under rapist, but it's not under the passive coercive. These are victims who are physically incapacitated and incapable of making decisions, sexual decisions, and incapable of protecting themselves. All right. Now, also under passive and coercive is, those sex offenders who engage or use tactics such as manipulation, mind control, brainwashing, threats of violence. If you don't do this, I'm going to kill you, or I'm going to kill your loved ones, I'm going to kill your kids. Other threats, such as if you don't do this, or if you tell anyone, I might go to prison and I'm going to be separated from my kids and they're going to have to grow up without a dad. Those types of things that are manipulative, that is what your passive and coercive sex offenders tend to employ. The threats and playing on sympathy and different things like that. Rape is usually a crime that is rooted in powerlessness and or anger. And that's something for people to think about. And when I say powerlessness, what I'm saying is rapists oftentimes have other areas or periods of time in their life in the past where they felt powerless. And so they end up committing acts of rape for power. An example would be, I once saw a sex offender who had some mother issues. His mother was unavailable. She abandoned, rejected, neglected, all those different things. When he became older and he began to date, now we're getting into the date rape, okay? But date rape is not passive and coercive. It is the active aggressive rapist. But when he began to date, and he was an attractive gentleman, so it's not like he couldn't get sex, but if he was dating a young lady and he made sexual advances and she rejected him, he would then commit date rape. And so his treatment, I had to do insight-oriented psychotherapy to try to figure out where that was coming from. And where it was coming from was the powerlessness that he experienced as a child, because he was powerless to stop his mother from rejecting and abandoning him. And so when he would get rejected by these young ladies, he would resolve to rape them.
Showing his power.
Yes. And so essentially, he was indirectly raping his mother's rejection in the form of whoever it was he was currently dating. Now, the question of, because I'm gonna apply this question to every type of rapist. The question of, is it true that once a sex offender, always a sex offender? When it comes to rapists, some rapists are amenable to treatment. Now, back in the day, like 20 some odd years ago, that was not thought to be the case. But rapists are amenable to treatment. They can be rehabilitated, but it is an extremely difficult process. And as I said, the first step is to do that insight-oriented psychotherapy. And if you can make some progress in that area, then you can do the relapse prevention planning, which falls up under your cognitive behavioral therapy. But it is not true that no rapist can be rehabilitated. Now, when it comes to those violent rapists who also are aroused by the violence in it, the chances of them being rehabilitated is very slim. Okay. Yeah. Really, I'm kind of talking about the date rapists, that category of rapists, and, you know, the passive coercive category of rapists is most likely to respond positively to treatment. Okay, Stacy D, what was your question about rapists? What were you going to say?
Well, I don't know. You just kept talking. I don't know.
Did I?
I think you probably did.
It was something about rapists.
You know, that and that's one of those ones that I never wanted to venture into. I just never, you know, I'm very spiritual, and I just never did want their spirits to. I just didn't want to deal with those individuals. I just couldn't, because I have to be able to really, and I just couldn't get into that one. I really appreciate all that you have done, Gerald, because you have been a hell of a therapist with these, because not everyone, I'm telling you, my brother's bad in what he does. Most
therapists do not work with sex offenders.
No.
Especially if they have children. And, you know, think about it. I didn't have kids back in the day when I was working with them. And so I didn't have those kind of counter-transference issues back then. Because when you do sex offender treatment, you are sitting like on the sex offender team at the mental health center, where we were seeing sex offenders back to back, 8-10 hours a day. And
yeah, I got out of there. I think I worked 3 weeks. I was like, I couldn't, I was taking it home. But I'm gonna tell you one thing about it. Working in that atmosphere made me so keen on how I moved with the men that I dated.
Right.
And just which I was already very protective over my children, but that just put on 5 more layers of protection. Like,
yes,
because that, you know, where I was living at then with my children, it was only 1 bathroom. So no, and you got to go through my daughter's. You would have to pass through my daughter's bathroom after you come out of my bathroom, out of my bedroom, my daughter's bedroom, to get to the bathroom. So now I'm cool about you spending the night. I mean, it just.
Yeah.
But well, you know, it's good for my children.
Yeah, it is a learning
because
experience.
They was like, sure, well, we can count on one hand how many men we done seen mama with.
Right. And a lot of kids who experience sex abuse is at the hands of somebody that they mama done brought up in the house. Or mama was passed out and it was somebody in the house, you know.
And those are things, and that's something that I just could not, I wouldn't have been able to live with it. I probably wouldn't, because I probably would have shot them and then shot myself, because I put that on my children. And like I said, it's just a lot, because a lot of my daughter's friends, you know, and my daughter one of my daughters had to come back to me and was like, Mama, I'm so glad that you watched over us, because almost all my friends been sexually abused.
Yes. Yeah.
By their mothers, by their mama's boyfriends, or their uncles.
Mm-hmm. And I'm going to get
into that.
Yeah, I'm going to get to the category of sex offenders who date women to get access to their kids. But working on the sex offender unit, I left the unit because it's difficult. When you do sex offender treatment, you are listening to the gory details on sex offenses. all the
Step
gory
by
details.
step
It's
by
a lot to carry with you. It affects your everywhere I went. Everybody looked like a sex offender. When you do that work, you see a man, he just innocently holding his baby in Walmart, and you looking at him
be like,
like,
I wonder is he fondling his baby when he changing the diaper.
and that's why I left the team. Even though I continued to see sex offenders, I was able to control how much of that I was doing. I do not suggest to therapists that they just full-time, 40 hours a week, see sex offenders day in and day out. It's overwhelming. All right. Next category is the statutory rapists. Your statutory rapists, these are fools who take advantage of young, underage kids, young girls. They are underdeveloped. They are immature, not underdeveloped physically, more so emotionally and psychologically. They take advantage of the immature state of mind of their victims, which makes it easy to manipulate them, okay, and form relationships and sexual encounters with them. Now, the thing about your statutory rapists is that they oftentimes, on their level, they are kind of what would be considered a loser by women in their age group. But to, a 16, 17-year-old high school student, she's like, oh my God, my man is 25 years old. He a grown man.
And he drives me and picks me up from school every day.
There
and he gives me $5 for lunch.
Right. And so when you have these,
that was me.
When you have these, well, and I had friends that, when we were in high school, who dated military guys. And from their perspective, it was like, I got the option of dating these high school fools who are immature, or dating a grown man who is dating me because I'm a grown woman. And even as a kid, I was like, well, he 25 years old. He old enough to be dating an attorney. You ain't on the level of what he could be dating. So he ain't 16, where he's 17. Supposed to be. He's not where he's supposed to be. And so for those men who struggle in social skills and where they're at in life, it is a huge challenge for them to step to a woman like Stacy D. You see, one of these fools approaching you this weekend, it's a total waste of time.
And I even think that's true. I see a lot of that now, especially when I be bonding. Like these men are in their 40s and 50s, and they are bonding out their girlfriend that's 24, 25 years old. Same thing to me.
Well, it is because she is still at a stage of life where he's elevated above her. And so he's able to present as if he really has it going on. But when it comes to women, when it comes to women in his age group, they like, fool, you do not have it going on. You ain't got a damn thing. So that's when they begin to take advantage of young girls.
But you know what, Gerald, I think I do have a side note on that one. And this is the ones that I know Gerald gonna be mad at me. But I just think that there is one area of those statutory rapes that I was on the line about. Because now in high school, they have the 9th graders who are 13, 14 years old, and they have the seniors that are 17, 18 years old. And I'm gonna let you know, when I rode up in Washington High School, and we were the first freshmen in high school. And and me and my clique, our whole thing was about how many seniors trying to get on you? How many seniors trying to get on you? And guess what? We were like 13, 14, and they were 17, 18. But they have us all in the same environment and everything. We eating lunch together. We're in the glass hallways together. You know, that's the one statutory rape thing on statutory rape that I'd be like, I struggles with a little bit, you know, I do.
Well, I remember in high school as a senior, me and my friends talking about how the freshmen were off limits because they were too young. And here's something to think about. Out of all my years of seeing sex offenders, I only had 2 who failed treatment. Okay, they failed treatment, they relapsed, and they needed to be locked up. One, I kicked him out of treatment knowing that he would go to prison, and he was a rapist. He was a violent rapist. He had tried to rape a young girl and put a plastic bag over her head to kill her. Fortunately, he walked out of the room and he thought she was dead. She was just unconscious. She woke up, she removed the bag, and she lived. They had the nerve to refer this fool to me for therapy, and I immediately had to kick him out. But here's what I want you to think about the seniors and the freshmen. The other sex offender that I saw years and years ago who failed treatment is a sex offender who, as a senior in high school, he preyed on young boys. And the way he would lure them is he would use oral sex to lure them, because when you're 14 years old, a lot of 14-year-old boys, even if they like, I ain't into boys, but he is often to suck my penis. And he would use oral sex to lure them in. And then, of course, that is the sexual abuse, and it would continue. Now, fast forward 15 years, this fool is currently in trouble because he was never held accountable as a statutory rapist back in high school when he was a senior, taking advantage of these freshmen. The school went so far as to put him in ASP, the after school program, to try to separate him from the freshmen. Right. It didn't work. Fast forward, he grew up, went to college, graduated, became a teacher, and started molesting his students. Students in the same age range as those freshmen that he was molesting back in the day. So these are really? It. Yes. So wow. When it comes to statutory rapists, the area where I can understand a little more is when the young lady, there's not a 4-year age gap, because that's clearly a sex offense. But when the age of consent, let's say she's 17 and he's 18. See, that is when judges can sometimes be lenient, because they're like, she legally is not old enough to be having sex, but he's 1 year older than her. They're just within the 2 years, you know, or she's 16, you know, in a lot of states, 16 is the age of consent. You can get married. Her boyfriend has turned 17. They've been together for months, and it's like, okay, was he supposed to break up with her on his birthday? Like, how do you handle that situation?
That's not realistic.
Exactly. And so judges can be lenient with the statutory rapists in those instances, but then you have to you have to keep in mind there is the other extreme, which is the fool that I saw
that went to college and now he's a teacher.
And most likely went into that.
On his record. Nothing was on his record.
He was never held accountable because young boys are embarrassed. They're not coming forward and saying this senior had sex with me. They're not doing that. And so even though I hotlined the fool multiple times, the best that could be done was the school giving him consequences. He was never held, and to this day, he is just now being held accountable because he's a teacher. But he's been into young boys for years and years and years. Okay, so that's the statutory rapist. Now, the incestuous family structure sex offenders, and I need to explain this. I'm sorry, let me back up. Statutory rapists, are they amenable to treatment? Can they be rehabilitated? The answer is yes and no. It depends. What I just described about a fool preying on freshman boys, no, there's no rehabilitation for him. He needs to be incarcerated. But when it comes to, well, my girlfriend is 16, I'm 17, in those instances, the way we handle that in treatment is we just make it clear, like, you, unfortunately, yes, y'all all in the high school together, but you need to be making better decisions. You don't want to be a registered sex offender for the rest of your life. In those, it's not so much about them needing to be rehabilitated. They just need to understand the law. Those are not people who tend to grow up and continue to prey on teenagers. They're like, my girlfriend's 2 years younger than me. You fast forward and catch them at 30, they with some woman who's 28, 29, or 30. They're not still chasing after like a 15-year-old.
The high schoolers.
Exactly. So they can be rehabilitated. Okay, the incestuous family structure offenders. These are sex offenders within the family unit where you have like a father who begins to sexually abuse his daughter. This happens because the family structure gets off kilter. The spouse is unavailable. These are the types of cases where you have a husband, he has a wife, they have a daughter. The wife is either physically unavailable because she's a man in the family, or she's psychologically and emotionally unavailable. She's struggling with addiction. She is not functioning in the role as a wife. And so the family structure, when we do structural family therapy, we had the parents on this level, we had the kids on this level. If the wife becomes absent, sometimes that teenage daughter will ascend up into the role of her mother and begin to take care of her father. She starts cooking, she starts doing laundry, she starts taking care of the younger siblings. The mother is unavailable. What ends up happening is that father can, before he even realizes it, begin to interact with his teenage daughter as if she is his wife. She is experiencing what's called parentification. She's a parentified child. She's no longer a kid. She's like, in his mind, she's helping, she's his spouse. And so those boundaries get crossed, and he begins to have a sexually abusive relationship with his daughter. Now, these sex offenders actually respond very well to treatment, possibly better than all the others. Because in treatment with them, you work to get the family structure realigned. At the mental health center, we used to actually do full reunification with these families and work the kids back into the home. Now, let me say, it takes 2 years of intensive treatment. 2 years of treatment that included lie detector tests, treatment for the sex offender, treatment for the victim, the child, treatment for the wife, so that she can become available to her dadgum husband again. So if she needs treatment for her drug addiction or alcoholism or whatever it is that caused her to be absent. And so the treatment for the incestuous family structure offenders is to get the family structure back to where it's supposed to be, the husband and the wife as partners, get that parentified child back on the level of being a child. They being a child, they actually respond very well in treatment. This is always shocking to people, like, y'all letting them kids go back into that home? They respond well. Those types of sex offenders are not becoming sexual with their child because they have an attraction to pubescent or prepubescent children. That is not their motive. It's not about attraction. And so that's the reason why they are amenable to treatment. All right. Now we got to get to the pedophiles. Let me just straight off the jump. Pedophiles are not amenable to treatment, okay? A pedophile, you're not rehabilitating a pedophile. A pedophile is a person who molests typically prepubescent children. They want that young kid before she is fully developed. They don't want like her with full breast and pubic hair. They are attracted to prepubescent children, underdeveloped, who look.
That's why I had to leave the sexual abuse team. That's why I had to leave the sexual abuse team.
The pedophiles. But see, at the mental health center, we didn't treat pedophiles. They got kicked out of there.
Came in.
They
came in.
Yeah, but they would get kicked out. There's no, you can't change what a person likes. You can't change what is in
what they like.
A person's attraction template. If a person is attracted to underdeveloped prepubescent children, you're not going to change them into wanting a woman with full breast and pubic hair.
No.
Now, what some clinicians will try to do is steer them in the direction of females who are 18, but they still look prepubescent. They may have small breasts, and the offender may be able to convince them to shave their pubic hairs. Here's my perspective, my take on that. The risk is too high. It is too risky. You cannot trust a pedophile to find adult partners who look prepubescent, because the lure and the draw is to actual prepubescent victims. And it would just be hard to sleep at night wondering, when is he going to cross back over to actual children? And so
what if y'all had a child? I mean, it's just too much.
Yes. Too much. And so societal control kicks in when it comes to the pedophiles. They get incarcerated. Okay, the last category of sex offenders are your voyeurs, those types of indirect, non-aggressive sex offenders. They got the binoculars. The woman, she's getting dressed. She forgot to close the curtains, and you got this freak across the hall with his binoculars on. He looking at him because he's a freak. Okay, and so they are
like, oh.
Right. So they're indirect. They are non-aggressive, but it's still a sex offense because a woman.
They just like looking.
Yeah, but a woman has a right to not have like a freak looking at them without their permission. Now, something that I suggest everybody check out the Watchdog app. If you are a parent or a grandparent, let me prepare you though. There's an app called Watchdog. It has all the sex offenders that are registered on it. Let me warn you and prepare you, when you pull up this app and enter your address, it does not matter where you live. Every flag represents an offender. Be prepared to be shocked at how many flags there are. But the benefit of this is every flag, you can click on it. You get to see their face, their name. You get to see all that information. The reason why this is so upsetting to people is because everybody likes to believe that there's no sex offenders in their neighborhood. They pull up the Watchdog app and they quickly realize that they are surrounded by sex offenders. Do not allow the fear and the shock to deter you from utilizing the Watchdog app. Everybody needs to be familiar with the Watchdog app.
Yes.
Because we are surrounded by sex offenders. Now, yes, I want to also say though, over 20 years of treating sex offenders, I only had 2 who failed treatment. Now, at the same time, those 2 do a huge amount of damage. But when it comes to sex offenders, it is incorrect to assume that none of them could be rehabilitated, but it does require treatment, and it's long therapy. I'm talking it's
and they have to be engaged and
2-year yes, they have to be engaged. It's intensive treatment. They have to really want to shed and free themselves from that behavior. That's what it takes. And sex offenders that I have seen, like I talked about the date rapist who, once we did the inside oriented treatment and he realized that he had some mother issues and that he did incredibly well in treatment, successfully completed treatment, never relapsed, went on, he built a full life.
Did he have a better relationship with his mother, Drew?
Oh, he had always had an incredible relationship with his mother.
Oh,
the anger was being displaced onto these young girls. So the mother was still being put on a pedestal and treated like a queen because this was a woman who would reject him anyway. So what was he going to do? Confront her for rejecting him and risk further rejection? But when a young girl would reject him, all of that would bubble up to the surface and the aggression would come out. And so when it comes to sex offenders who, and whether or not they are amenable to treatment, sex offenders who cross over and cover multiple classifications and categories are not amenable to treatment, okay? For example, let's take R. Kelly, for example. He meets the criteria for more than one type of sex offender. Yeah, he is not amenable to treatment because some of his victims, and to anybody else who saw that video of him sexually abusing that prepubescent girl, that was pedophilia. But at the same time, he has victims who were fully adult, mature, developed, but the control and the coercion was in place, okay? And so he meets the criteria for multiple types of sex offenders, and it's too much to treat. So those types of sex offenders and mass sex offenders who have tons of victims are not amenable to treatment because they have essentially become addicted to the behavior. And addictions, no matter what the addiction is, the prognosis when it comes to addictions is always pretty poor. And so when it is a sexually abusive addiction and they have massive amounts of victims, you're not rehabilitating that person. You're not rehabilitating somebody with 10, 15, 20 victims. Okay, so that's sex offenders, the types of sex offenders, and whether or not.
This was really a real tough show, but these are things that needed to be said and educated on. These are very important things, and that's what we try to do. KUAW represents what, Gerald?
Knowledge, understanding, and wisdom.
Wisdom.
Thank you all for joining us for the show. They can't see, but Mr. Walker's like, yes. Okay. If you all have any questions about sex offenders, you can email them to us. You can enter your questions in the comments section on Facebook or on YouTube. That is our show for today. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Chantel Lee. Thank you. She was on our line. Chantel Lee.
Oh, really?
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for joining us, Chantel. All right. And remember, worry about nothing.
And pray about everything.
Thank you for joining us. God bless and take care.
Bye-bye now.